everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and I'm very excited to welcome for the first time Mr. Blake Rudis. Hi, Blake.
Hello.
He is here to present Maximize Your Topaz Workflow Efficiency Using Actions, and I'm super excited to watch this webinar myself because we haven't really had anybody come in and really work with actions and showing the Topaz, incorporating Topaz into their action workflow. So very excited to see this. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Blake here in just one second, but first I just want to tell you some of the technical things about this session. If you have any trouble with your sound during this session, usually just logging off and logging back in after shutting down anything that might be running flash or taking up a lot of memory on your system is going to resolve those issues. If you have any trouble with your screen following along, if it freezes up or anything like that, usually just minimizing and maximizing your GoToWebinar viewer is going to resolve those issues. Also, if you have any questions, you can type them into your questions module on your GoToWebinar panel. Myself and Darcy will be answering those as quickly as possible during the session, and then we'll actually be having about a 10 to 15 minute Q&A session with Blake after his presentation. So let me tell you quickly about a little bit more about Blake, and then I'll turn it over to him. Blake is the creator and host of EverydayHDR.com. It's an amazing site. I'll be sending out that link during or with your follow-up emails. He received his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the University of Delaware in 2006, studying printmaking and sculpture, but had an interest in painting, photography, and ceramics as well. He has since channeled his passion for the arts into his love of HDR photography, and he has a great site. Again, it's EverydayHDR.com. He's been publishing written and video tutorials on that site since about 2010, and he aims to inform the masses of upcoming products and software with some really nice reviews. Definitely check it out. In 2012, Everyday HDR was awarded the Best HDR Blog of 2012 by the readers of HDR One Magazine. And again, he has recently published Exploring HDR, Photoshop, Photomatix, and Topaz Adjust. So with that, let me go ahead and hand this on over to Blake so he can get started.
All right, excellent. Am I showing my screen now? Here we go. Okay, excellent. I just wanted to start this out by saying thank you to Topaz Labs for what they do for all of us here with these venues that we can not only have great products, but also the ability to learn from one another through these webinars. So what I'm going to be showing today is actions, and I know when I first got into actions and opened up that panel, I was scared and frightened because it's very intimidating. But I'm going to break it down really simply, and some of you might have remembered the VCR. I might be dating myself a little bit with age, but the VCR was a really simple concept. You put a tape into the VCR, you pressed record, and sometimes record and play at the same time, and it would record the TV show that you wanted to record. It's not like the DVRs that you have today where you could program ahead of time. You'd actually have to go on there and wait for your show to start, record it. And that's kind of how actions work. It's really simple. You start recording, and then you stop recording, and you can play it back whenever you want on any TV as long as it has a VCR, or in our case, on any photograph as long as it's in Photoshop. So to get to actions, if you see how I have my Photoshop set up, I have a bar on the side of my history panel here that actually shows actions right here. If you don't have that, it's not that big of a deal. You can go to Window and go to Actions, or press Alt or Option F9. And by clicking that, it's going to open up your Actions window pane. Now, this is basically a series of folders. When you open this up, there's going to be some preset folders that are already here from Photoshop. They do give you some pretty great actions to start with, but you can also make your own. And that's what we're going to be capitalizing on today, is the ability to create your own awesome actions and play them back on any picture whenever you'd like. So in looking at this interface, what we're seeing here is a bunch of different folders. And when you open up one of those folders, it shows all the actions that are within that folder, and then when you open up one of those actions, it then shows you what's happening during that action. So each one of these second tiers, we'll call them, are your action itself. And if you press play, it's going to go ahead and do that on your image. So what you want to do is start off by making a new folder. As you can see here, I have tons of folders. I have Blake Effects, Blake's Effects, Blake's Actions. There's nothing really different between my effects and my actions. But they're there. I have thousands of actions that I use all the time, even to the point that I don't even remember what I've recorded, so I've recorded probably the same one 3 or 4 times. But, you know, I know where they are, so we're going to create a new set. So when you open up, when you press the little folder icon down here, it's going to open up a new set. This new set I'm going to call Webinar Actions, and press OK. So now there's nothing in here. When I hit this first here, that we have no actions. We need to create a new action. And that's pretty much what this bar is going to come in handy down here. So the first action I'm going to show you is not going to show really anything with Topaz. It's really just going to be showing how to create an action, a basic, simple action. When you press the new action icon, also looks like a page being torn. You're going to be able to name this action. So I'm just going to call this intro action. The set is going to be within webinar actions. If you happen to click the wrong one, you can go ahead and change that here. I could put this in Blake's effects if I want to, but then I probably wouldn't know where it was, like all the rest of them. So I'm going to go into webinar actions. And the really cool part about this too is that you can make this action a function key. So if you wanted to, you could make this Shift F4. So whenever I press Shift F4, this action is going to happen. So let's go ahead and press record. Now, like I told you before, just like a VCR, every single thing that you do while you record this action is going to be recorded into the action. So it's important, when I first started making these actions, I would write everything down that I did, go back and record it based off of my notes that I recorded, because even every mistake that you add, which I'm probably going to make some here, are going to show up in these actions as well. So now you see the record light is on. Everything I'm doing in this action is being recorded. So I'm going to do something simple like a levels adjustment. And I'm going to make this levels adjustment just increase the dark a little bit and then maybe decrease the lights a little bit. You know, it's not meant to be great. I'm just, you know, doing this to show you right now. Now, if we press stop, this action is recorded. And every time I go ahead, I'll go ahead and delete this for now. When I press play on this action, it's going to do the exact same thing I just did. It's going to do that exact same levels adjustment. Now, say you build a whole series of action that you want to do in this action. We'll do a curves one as well. So I need to start recording again. Again, I showed a mistake, but start recording again, and then go to curves. And I'll just make an S curve here, and this is looking really kind of bad, but bad example. I'll go ahead and stop. So now if I delete these two and go ahead and press play on this action, it does both of those. Now, it's not a very good looking action here. So let's say I wanted to make, instead of having to do the exact same thing on every one of them, I can make a stop, a dialogue stop. If you click this box right here, when I press play on this action, it's going to stop me. And ask me what I want to do with that levels adjustment. So instead of doing that ugly levels adjustment that we just did, I can now make a more accurate levels adjustment to this photograph that's specific to this photograph. So if it's an adjustment that you know you're going to be doing multiple things on multiple different photos, we know that not every adjustment is the same. So you can make a stop dialogue for that specific one. So now that you know how to record a basic action, if you ever need to add anything to that action, like I just did before, you can always press record. So what I want to do is I want to record flattening this image. So I'm going to press layer, flatten image, and then stop. So now when I press play on this action, it's going to ask me for that stop because I added that dialogue stop. Press OK. Now it's going to do everything I just wanted to do and then flatten it for me. So you can see this is pretty helpful if you've got a lot of workflow that you're doing to a lot of different images. I know this is pretty bad looking right now, but I promise they'll get better. If you want to save this action, you can't save an individual action. You have to save a folder of actions. So if you go up to the block up here, you're going to see Save Actions. This is your little dialog block in your Actions menu. So if you want to save this specific one, go up here and press Save Actions. Now you can save this within your folder, so we'll call this Webinar Actions and press Save. So now every series of actions that I do in here and then save in that Webinar Actions is going to be saved to that folder. It will not automatically update, which can be a problem, because if you have a fatal error in Photoshop, which we know those happen pretty often, any action that you recorded in there will not be saved unless you saved it before it had that fatal error. So it's important to save your actions often. Usually after I make an action, the first thing I do is go right back up to that folder and go to Save Actions. So, and one of the great things too is if you want to share these actions with your friend, you can save those actions to your desktop, email them to that person. As soon as they double click it, it's going to open up right in Photoshop. It's one of the easiest installs you can possibly do. But they need to know that if they want that to stay there, they're going to need to go up to Save Actions. So that's one pretty cool thing that you can do here. Let's go ahead and get into some Topaz specific actions. So I'm going to open up my first example image here, and I'm going to create an action that uses Topaz Adjust. So the first thing I want to do here in this Webinar Actions folder is create a new action. So let's call this action Topaz 1, and then press record. Again, this is recording everything that we do. So you kind of have to know what you're going to do going into it. I've practiced this several times now, so I don't need to write anything down. It's all pretty much in front of me. So I'm going to go ahead and, before I do anything in Topaz products, I usually make a duplicate copy of the background. So I'm going to click on my background layer and press Control J. That will duplicate. Also Command J for anyone on a Mac. That's going to duplicate that layer. Now I'm going to go up to Filter, go to Topaz Labs, and Topaz Adjust 5. Okay, so I've got my Topaz Adjust 5 panel open here, and I'm going to use one of my favorite presets that I've created. I don't want you to worry too much about the presets that I'm working with right now. I don't want to run through all that because I really want you to get the handle of recording actions. So if you want any of these presets, I'm going to have these available on my website and also give them to Topaz Labs so that they can disperse them as well. So I'm going to click Split Tone and Moody. This is also an action that is featured in the book Exploring HDR, and press OK. Now this creates the action of what we just did in Topaz Labs. So again, if we were to press stop, it's going to stop recording that action. Let's go ahead and delete this layer, and we can go ahead and press play, and it won't even bring Topaz up. It'll just play that action and do it again. So if I wanted to bring another image in, I could go ahead and open up that and press play, and it will do the exact same thing on this image that it did on the one before. So, all right. So the next action I want to show is going to be a combination of using two Topaz products. Now, the reason why I'm showing these multiple different actions being recorded is to get you in the loop of in the constant action of recording these actions. So creating new actions, recording new actions. If you don't see it multiple times, you sometimes forget what you're supposed to be doing. So we're going to create a new copy, a new action. Create new action and record Topaz action 2. So what I want to do here is use a combination of Topaz Adjust 5 as well as black and white effects. So if we go to Filter and go to Topaz Labs and go to Topaz Adjust 5, we'll go into that first. So I'll go ahead and keep this same preset that I had loaded here, this Split Tone and Moody. Now you don't have to use this one. You can use any of the other ones you want. I like to use my presets and name them like what I think it looks like. This is a split toned image and it looks kind of moody to me. So a lot of times my names for my presets are very simple because if I don't make them simple like that, I'll forget. Like vintage vignette. It looks kind of vintage and it has a vignette. It's straightforward. But there's some other great ones in here that we'll go over in a few seconds here. If you're not familiar with Topaz Adjust, this is a great program, especially if you're an HDR nut like myself. Whether you're taking a single image and making it look great and just making it pop, or if you're taking your HDR images to the next level, it's a great program for that. So we'll go ahead and press OK. I don't want you to hit apply, and I'll show you that in a couple of recordings coming up here. You're just going to press OK. So the next program we're going to go into is Black and White Effects 2. So go to Topaz Labs and go to Black and White Effects 2. We don't need to stop the recording and start the recording again. This is recording everything that we're doing right now. So don't worry about what's going on in your actions panel right now. Just worry about where you need to go and what you need to do to record. So we'll go ahead and Topaz Black and White Effects 2. Again, another great program from Topaz Labs. The new interface that they've done here is absolutely incredible. It's so streamlined and new. I like it. So you can go through one of the many presets that you're seeing here in Topaz Black and White Effects. What I love about the new preset preview here is that you get a very large preview when you click on, when you hover over that preset that you're looking for. So I'll go to my collection here, and again, I was doing a review for Topaz Black and White Effects 2, and I said to myself, man, I'm really digging it, and I made an action, or a preset called Digging It. So this is the Digging It action. Again, a simple preset name for, oh, it's telling me I don't have my key. Imagine that. Interesting. That's probably my fault. We'll just do a regular Black and White Effects, Black and White Effects 1, and just do a black and white version. My 30-day trial must have just ended today, as I practiced this yesterday. Isn't that always how that works, right? Same thing. It still looks very similar. I'm still digging it. I just don't have a white border. I have a black border. So if we go ahead and press stop at this point, we can go ahead and open up any other image. Just open up the first image and go ahead and press play on this Topaz action. Now, you're probably saying, didn't you forget something, Blake? You forgot to do what you always do to every one of your photos when you bring them in to create an action in Topaz Adjust, and that's to duplicate the layer. And I didn't forget. I did it on purpose. I know that everyone always says that because they want to, show that they know what they're doing, but I really did do that on purpose because I want to show you that even if you do something in the action and record it, you can always move it around and do it whenever. So what I'm going to do is click on Topaz Action 2. I'm going to press record. Now I'm going to press Command or Control J to duplicate the layer and then press stop. Now if I play this action as is now, it'll run through Topaz Adjust and then Topaz Black and White Effects, and then it'll duplicate that layer. Not exactly what I had going on, right? Because my whole MO was that I was going to go ahead and duplicate the layer first and then do the actions. It's really simple. All you have to do is click and hold on that one part and move it up. So we did that layer copy. Layer via copy was also the duplicate of the layer. Now we can click on that, move it up, and now I'm going to go ahead and delete these and start over. And when I press Topaz Action 2, it's going to duplicate the layer, run through Topaz Adjust 5, and then run through Topaz Black and White Effects. So I did do that on purpose for a reason. You know that now. Now what I can also do here is, if I do intend on flattening the image, I can do the same thing. I can record whatever I want in this process. So if I click on the record button, I can press Control-Shift-Alt-E to make a stamp of this layer. So we'll always make a stamp of this layer. So if I click on all this stuff below, you don't see what happened to what was going on below because this is the primary stamp above it. Or I can go Layer, Flatten Image. And again, I wanted to show you all that stuff because look at all the stuff that I was recording there. It recorded every single thing that I just did. That was one of those important things that I wanted you to think about in the first place, was that we're a VCR here. We're recording everything. So it's going to run through all the stuff I just did, but because it's doing it lightning fast, you don't see that hide layer, hide background, show layer, show background. All you see is the flattened image. So with all these excess stuff here, these were my mistakes. This is what I wasn't trying to record. All I have to do is click and hold and drag it to the trash can. Click and hold on that part I didn't want and drag it to the trash can. And just keep doing that for every one of those and drag them all to the trash can. So now, when I go back and click Topaz Action 2, it's going to duplicate it. It's going to go through all the stuff I told it to and then flatten the image. You don't see any of that stuff in the process. And at any point, if I wanted to not flatten the image, I could throw that away as well and run right back through it. So you see these actions are happening really fast on these photos. It's not because I have this super sick fast computer. it's because these are low resolution files. I want you to know that when you do these on your photographs, it might take a little bit longer to run through that action, and what you don't want to do is get too hasty. So if your action is playing, don't try to click on a layer while it's going, just wait till it's done. Because if you click on a layer, you could be interrupting a really important part that's happening in your action. So don't click on any layers, don't try to move anything, don't click on another image, because watch what happens if I do that here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this stuff, and then press Topaz Action 2, and then I'm going to try and beat it. I'm going to click play, and then click on the next image, and oh, it didn't do it because I was in Topaz Products. But if I was doing something like curves adjustments and layers adjustments, and it was doing a whole series of them, and I click on another photograph in my Photoshop panel, it will go to that layer and continue that action on that image, not the image that I wanted to start on. So you see how that could be detrimental to your product there. The action that you could be running on that one photo will then go on to another photo, and you don't want to do that. So when you hit play on those actions, let them work, let them go, and just stop. You know, this is the time where you can go upstairs, get a cup of coffee if your studio happens to be in the basement. Get a cup of coffee, you know, maybe turn on Cars 2 and then walk downstairs. So, you know, my son's up there watching TV and now I can do these actions. Don't worry, I'm not that kind of father that would do that. We hang out, we have a lot of fun. So now I'm going to record another action. And in this action, what I want to show is using Topaz Adjust maybe twice on one image. You know, when we're in the Topaz products, we tend to press the apply button, and the apply button is great when you're working in on a regular file, because you press the apply button and you can do two effects to one image within the same program, and that's a great concept and all for when you're within the photograph by itself. But when you're recording an action, it's kind of like a nightmare thing. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to make a new action and go to, and I'm really not trying to point out any deficiencies at all. This is really just one of those things that that it's something that you kind of want to just think about when you're going through your process. Topaz Action 3. See here, for some reason, it thinks I'm in the pseudo TIFFs set, so I'm going to go ahead and go down to Webinar Actions instead, and then press record. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Topaz Photo, or I was going to say Photo Effects, but I'm not going to. Topaz Adjust 5. And in there, I'm going to go ahead and do we'll just do the split tone, and no, let's do something else. Let's show something different. Let's do HDR Pop. If you don't have Topaz Adjust 5, in the HDR collection, there is a preset in here called Dynamic Pop 2. I love this one. It takes any HDR image and really exaggerates it a lot. But it might not look so great here, but there's many things we can do to fix that in the future. So we'll go ahead and put Dynamic Pop 2 on there and then press Apply. And then we'll go ahead and go into my collection and go to something like, let's do this one, HDR Review Topaz, and then press Apply. And then press OK. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this action, go back to the beginning, and then try to play it and see what happens. It's not going to do anything because I hit the apply button and then pressed OK. Now the smart filters, they work great within Topaz Adjust 5 by themselves, but what you want to do is you want to record that apply separately. So I'm going to go ahead and I trashed what I just did there, and I'm going to record a new action with this Topaz Action 3. So I'm going to duplicate this layer because I didn't do it in the last one. It's always something I forget to do, so it's something I have to record later. I'll just go ahead and do it now. Command or Control J. Duplicate the layer, go to Filter, go to Topaz Labs, and Topaz Adjust 5. So now what we want to do is we want to go back to that first one that we did here. That was the Dynamic Pop 2, and press OK. We didn't press Apply, we pressed OK. All right, so now we're still within this same recording. Go back up to Filter, go to Topaz Labs, Topaz Adjust 5, and then go to the My Collection and HDR Review. This is the original preset that I used when I recorded my review for Topaz Adjust 5. So now when I press stop, and let's go back to the original, and then press play, it's going to run through both settings that I did there in Topaz Adjust. Now this might be looking pretty hard right now. It's a little bit too much for me. I could easily press record and then go in here and reduce the opacity of this so it's not so strong. I can also change it to luminosity so it only affects the light within the photograph and not the colors within the photograph, and you can see that if I increase this, if I put this on normal, you can see how the oranges are being affected here, but if I put it on luminosity, it doesn't really boost those as much. Now, I would keep it on luminosity, but I'm not going to affect the opacity here. I'm just going to go ahead and stop that. The reason why I'm not going to do the opacity change now is because maybe I don't want that to happen for every one of my photos. Maybe when I play this action, I want it to do the baseline stuff for me, and then I can go in here later and post-process it, because what looks good on one image is not always going to look good on another one. And if you leave your actions be at, when you have them specifically recorded for one picture, they only work for that one picture. So now I can reduce that opacity and go ahead and if I wanted to save this, press Layer, Flatten Image, or Control-Shift-E and move on, or Command-Shift-E for Mac users. So that's really important to think about. Use that Apply button. You don't want to press Apply during the actions recording. You want to press OK and do that each individually for each individual action that you create. So those were all actions that were used for specific functions within Topaz, Topaz, for making image-specific adjustments to make this look more stylized, give it some vignetting, what have you. What I want to show now is how you can incorporate actions in with your post-processing with Topaz. So you see we're building up here. We're kind of starting from the bare bones with that bare bones intro action, moving our way into one Topaz product, two Topaz products, and then the third one being the multiple within one. Now we're going to show how to use this with your curves adjustments, your levels adjustments, and anything else that you might do during your typical post-processing. So this photograph right here is straight out of my HDR processing software. I haven't done anything else to it because I want to record an action that maybe I took 15 photos of the exact same thing, and I bring it into Photoshop, and I usually do take 15 photos of the exact same thing, and that's even a small amount. Sometimes I'll take 30 or 40, especially when I'm photographing food for clients. That's one of those things that I take probably 100 pictures of the same hamburger or same food, whatever it is. Now, I do all my editing in Photoshop, so it makes it really easy for me if I record an action for that and then just play it on all the other pictures. That way, I don't have to think to myself, well, what was my curves adjustment for this? Because the lighting was the same. What was my levels adjustment for this? Because all the lighting was the same. You can record an action that incorporates your post-processing as well. So let's click on this Webinar Actions again. We're in this Webinar Actions folder, and we're going to press New Action. So let's call this Topaz 4. You see, I'm kind of have a repetition here. It's a pattern. Topaz 4. I'm getting really creative with my names here. And maybe I wanted this to have a function key, because if I'm going to be doing this on multiple products, maybe I can just go right in here and do Shift F6 to do it on every image as it goes through. So I'll make that F6, Shift F6 will make that happen. Press OK. So now I bring this photograph into my post-processing software right here in Photoshop, and I want to do the post-processing that I normally do on this, which would be a curves adjustment, a levels adjustment, maybe some saturation adjustment, typical stuff like noise reduction, really important with HDR photography, and then a high-pass sharpen layer on top of that to sharpen up that noise the layer that I just did the denoise on. So go ahead and just start doing your post-processing. You already started the recording, so go to levels adjustment. Now, one of the cool things about a levels adjustment here, not a lot of people know about this. If you press Alt and hold Alt, that would be Option for Mac users, and click on either the black or the white adjustment slider here. As you move it, you're going to see what colors are being affected by how dark you're making that area become. So that's going to start with the blues and the reds and the greens and you see all the little different areas there. You can do the same thing on the light side to see what is coming out. Just how bright is it when I move it this far? Ooh, it's horrible. I really stressed and I really clipped those shadows and highlights by doing that. And this is showing your highlights and shadows clipping. And the reason why I do it is because I like to incorporate black into my images, and I like to incorporate white in my images. It gives you a starting point and a stopping point as to what is black and what is white. Now, you might not see it directly, but your brain sees it. It sees that white, it sees that black. So I'll go ahead and press Alt and move those in. So then we'll do the curves adjustment. And with the curves adjustment, I just want to do a mild tone curve, like that S curve. You make your darks pop out a little more, make your lights pop out a little bit more. Move the darks down a little bit, move the lights up a little bit. So now what I want to do is I want to do a noise reduction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my background layer. I'm going to press Command or Control J to duplicate that. And you guessed it, I'm going right to Denoise because I love Denoise. I had a question, somebody asked me a question the other day about do I really think that noise processing software like Topaz Denoise has a place in post-processing? And my answer was yes, there's always a place for it in post-processing. The reason why they asked me that question was because of things like Lightroom and Camera Raw with their great noise functions. They have great noise functions in there. The only problem with it is that I can't record what I did in Camera Raw, but I can record what I did in Denoise. So that's where Denoise becomes invaluable for me when it comes to reducing my noise in my images. Does it still have a place in my workflow? Yes. And does it still have a place in everyone's workflow? I do believe the answer to that is yes. So for this image, because it's a JPEG, I'm just going to go to something like JPEG Strong. Now you can see back here, a lot of times with the HDR process, what happens is you're combining multiple different photographs on top of one another. If noise existed in every one of those photographs, you're now compiling that noise to a point that the computer programs and software sometimes think that that's actually details because you've created this noise sandwich, I like to call it. It's a really nasty noise area. But Topaz Denoise does a great job of reducing those areas. So I'm going to click JPEG Strong, maybe moderate because I'm losing a little bit of what's going on in the details of my cliff here, and then press OK. If this was a higher resolution file, the high noise reduction would have been great, but because it's such a low resolution file, we kind of lose a lot in that process. Again, I made these low res files so it would be easier for me to do these actions on these files. Otherwise, we'd be spending 20 minutes of our time here waiting for my actions to go through. So now that I've reduced the noise on this, what I want to do is create a high pass sharpen layer. And one of the things I like to use for a high pass sharpen layer is actually Topaz Detail 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. I want to duplicate the layer of the noise reduction and kind of sharpen up the areas that were reduced a little bit. So I want to get the noise out but bring out my details. So I'm going to press Command or Control J again to duplicate that background copy. Go to Filter, go to Topaz Labs, and we will go to Detail 3. So now that I'm in Detail 3, what I'm going to do is go into the Architectural Detail 2. It's a very stylized preset, and it really does bring out a lot of detail within the image. That's why I like it. It might be a little too much for me, so what I'm going to do is make a high pass of this. So with the high pass layer, you know what you're trying to do with the high pass layer is get those mid-tones to pop out a little bit more. That's basically what a high pass is doing. So I'm going to go to Filter, go to Other, and go to High Pass. I'm going to make this really low, like 0.4 or 0.6. Press OK, and then go to Linear Light. So now I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording because this is pretty much everything I wanted to do here. And then if you look at, let's go ahead and look at this image after what we did with the Topaz Detail 3. So this is what that Topaz Detail 3 gave us, and then this is after that Topaz Detail 3 high pass sharpen. We've got some really crisp sharpened details here that would look great in print. Maybe not so much for the web, might be too sharpened for the web, but for print this would be spectacular. So now, let's see how well we recorded this action, because sometimes, you know, you make errors. So let's go to the history here. Let's go back to the beginning, go to our actions, and then press play. Oh wait, I'm not going to press play. I'm going to press Shift F6 because I recorded it that way. So press Shift F6. We've got our curves layer, we've got our levels adjustment, we've got our duplicate layer for our denoise, and now we also have our sharpened layer. So this is a great way to incorporate not only Topaz products, but also your regular post-processing right into an action. If I were to open up any other photo, I can open up example 2. Let's go back to the beginning here, press play on this one. This must have been a higher resolution file because it's taken a little bit longer. That's all right. The great thing about this, though, is that as you record these actions, you can open up any image and press play on them. What I'm going to show you next is actually something called batch processing, where you can take one action and have it work on multiple different files within one folder. So all you do is say, okay, I've got these actions or these images here that need this action done on it. I want them to go into this folder. So when I press play, I'm going to come back after I've gotten my coffee and run around the house, did some errands maybe, and you could have 200 pictures already post-processed for you just by pressing play. I'll show you that in 1 second here. So you can see it did everything we wanted to do on this image as well. Now, like I said before, it doesn't always work the best for every photograph. So after you've pressed play on this one, you might need to reduce the opacity a little bit on your curves, maybe do the same thing on your levels here, because if we go to our levels adjustment, we might see that we introduced a lot of black here by pressing the Alt or Option button on there. So just something to think about, that every action is not going to work the same for every photograph, so you might need to go in and readdress some of those areas during what you did in post-processing. So now the grand finale of all this is to show you batch processing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Topaz One, the very first one that we did, and I'm going to go ahead and press play on this image. It's doing it on a duplicate layer. So what I want to do is, if I'm going to be batch processing my photographs, I want to make sure that I'm doing the same thing on every one of them, and it saves it without any hiccups. And what I mean by hiccups is I don't want it to stop. If I were to batch process 200 photos and it stopped for every one of them for me to press enter because I clicked on the little dialog box here, I'd be doing a lot of stopping and pressing enter. So when you're recording an action that's going to be specifically for batch processing, my suggestion is that it runs through the whole process and then flattens the image with no dialog boxes over here. So let's go ahead and do a record on this and go layer, flatten image, and then stop. So what this action is going to do is just run straight through all of this and then stop at the end. And it'll all be flattened, and then everything will be saved accordingly. So I'm going to click out of here and go to File, Automate. This is for batch processing. File, Automate, and then Batch. This looks intimidating as well, and it seems like anything in Photoshop that has words and numbers and asking questions is intimidating. But getting over that hurdle will really help you in the process. This is where the key phrase in this webinar is important: efficiency, maximizing efficiency. This will maximize your efficiency, especially if you have 15 to 100 photos, even more so. If they all need the exact same thing, don't bring them all into Photoshop and do them one by one. Use an action on them. So the question that's asked me here is, what do I want to play? I want to play the set of actions called webinar actions. Remember, this was called a set. And the action I want to use is going to be Topaz One. So now, the source, where are these images coming from? Are they files that are already opened within Photoshop, or are they within a folder? For this case, they're going to be in a folder. So I'm going to go to Choose Folder. I already have all that set up here. So this is my picks to use for webinar folder. Basically, what you need to do is navigate to the folder. Tell Photoshop where the pictures are that you want to batch process. So they're in this folder called Batch Processing, named likely so. Press OK. Now, if there were any open commands or any, if you had subfolders within that folder, you could include those. There are no subfolders in there. I know that because if I go into there, I don't have any subfolders in here. These are just the pictures that I want to show. If you did have subfolders in there and wanted all this action to take place on all those, you do the same thing. If there were any warnings, you could suppress all that stuff as well. Now, the destination, where do I want it to go? You have to tell Photoshop again what you want it to do. I want it to be put in a separate folder so that when I batch process all goes into a different folder. So, again, I navigate right down to Batched and press OK. Now it's going to ask a couple of questions here. What do you want it to be called? So as you go through here, it's going to give you an example of what you want this image to be called. My suggestion here is always have it end an extension. So let's say you have a mixed batch of JPEGs, GIFs, and TIFFs all in the same folder. When this action goes through, it's going to do all of, it's going to record them as such. So if it started as a JPEG, it's going to save it as a JPEG. If it started as a TIFF, it's going to save it as a TIFF. And if it started as a GIF, it's going to save it as a GIF. Unless, of course, you told Photoshop to do it otherwise in your action that you've recorded. So the document name will be the first part of what's going to end up here. So if we change this to, let's say, a one-digit serial number, see how I changed that to Topaz 1. It doesn't have an extension at the end. We want to end this with an extension. You will drive yourself mad because if you press play, it won't work for you. Compatibility here might be automatically set up. Mine's automatically set up for Windows. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just kind of show this right here and go into, press OK. It's opening all the pictures individually that were in this batch processing folder, and now it's, oh, see here I have a stop. This is a TIFF, and I have it set that it always opens my TIFFs in Camera Raw. See, here's one of those bad notes. I'm going to slap myself on the wrist. I should have told Photoshop not to open TIFFs in Camera Raw. So I'm going to press cancel, and then it's going to ask me, a command was canceled or stopped while batching. Do you want to continue or stop? Now I could stop because I want to change my settings, but I'm just going to press continue. So it's going to stop what it did for that TIFF and go ahead and continue on. And if you look in this batch folder, it's taking all of the photographs that were in the batch processing folder, and it's now putting them, automatically doing everything I told it to do with that action right here into that other folder that I specified. So now that was just, what, 12, 15, I don't know, 15 photos that all got the exact same treatment. So there was the original, or that was the new one, and then if we go in here, that was the original. So that pretty much concludes what I wanted to show on actions. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor now to Nicole again, and we can do some Q&A if you have any specific questions.
Thank you so much. This is lots of
No problem.
information, and we definitely have a lot of questions. I have a couple questions for you, Blake, regarding some of your images. The very first one that you showed, where was that taken, that scene on the beach?
That was the Carmel River State Beach in Carmel, California. That's actually where my wife and I got married. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I have a lot of comments coming in saying awesome, 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 awesome. I'm trying to find the questions.
Okay. One thing I did fail to mention, sorry. But one thing I did fail to mention is that if you're in any Photoshop prior to CS6, do not use a brush during your actions because it will not register. That would be if you made a mask and you want it to be recorded as such and be played back on any other image. It won't work that way. CS6, though, does allow for brush recording. So that's just a heads up.
Great tip. I had a couple, actually almost 15 people ask about your detail high pass technique. Would you mind going over that one more time?
No, absolutely not. So the basic idea with the high pass sharpen layer is that when you duplicate, let's say this image for example, Command or Control J to duplicate, go to Filter and then go to Other and go to High Pass. What you're doing is you're basically getting a neutral 50% gray pop that's really, when you complete the high pass process, it's going to kind of do a clarity, almost like a clarity adjustment on all of your details. So the reason why I use other programs to do that is because I like to get a really, I guess, stylized version of it and dumb it down. So I make everything kind of pop out a little bit. Oh, that was in Topaz Clean, sorry. Make everything pop just a little bit more. And by using Topaz Detail, I can make it pop. You know, it's making the colors pop, it's making the details pop. So when I do that high pass, it's going to be a really strong high pass, which can be sometimes overbearing, but you can control that with the opacity. So I went ahead and used that architectural detail. I know that it did the architectural detail 2 preset because, like most Topaz products, as soon as you open it up, it's going to go to the last one that you use. So I know I didn't really go over that in there, but go to Other, and then go down to High Pass. There's a couple different ways you can do a high pass. You can bring it up to 8.6 and then do a soft light. Now you see how there's colors here? I don't want color in my high pass sharpened layer. So you can press Control-Shift-U to desaturate all color and then press soft light. And that will give me a softer version of it. Or you can make that same layer, let's do the high pass light there again, and then go to Other, and then go to High Pass, and make it lower and go to Linear Light. Now, the reason why you don't want to do an 8.0 and then Linear Light is because it looks like this. It looks horrible. And I have this weird sensory thing in my tongue that when I see really oversaturated stuff, it's like someone put a 9-volt battery to it. I can't even look at this, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn my head away from that. If maybe put a 9-volt battery to your tongue, it's not fun. But you can go to Other, High Pass, and then do that Linear Light again on something lower like 0.6. And it creates a very nice, crisp, sharp high pass that's great for print. So when this prints, your details that are going to come out are going to be absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you. All right, we have quite a few questions about smart objects as well. Can smart objects work with your Actions workflow as well?
Yes, you can incorporate smart objects as well. The reason why you can incorporate the smart objects with it. You just have to make a smart object of it beforehand. That way you can go back in and adjust it accordingly. Now, one thing that you can get away from instead of doing a smart object, because sometimes smart objects can bog down the system because they do a lot of background stuff, is instead of making a smart object on any layer that you create, like say this, let's go into this Topaz Action 3, the one I created that had all the different layers in it. If you make a dialog on it, it's going to give you the same function as a smart object. So the great thing with whoever doesn't know about smart objects is that if you use a filter on a smart object, instead of making it a permanent filter, you can always go back, double-click it, and see what happened and change that filter. You can do the same thing right in your action. So you can use smart objects, but you don't have to, because that's the beauty of an action, is that you can create a little dialog box here so that as you run through this, let me go ahead and delete this layer I've got going on here. Because I put this dialog box here when I press play, it's going to stop and bring me into Topaz Labs, Topaz Adjust 5. And then if I press OK, it's going to continue on and do the rest of what I wanted it to do. So again, like I said before, it doesn't always work for every image. I wouldn't put something like this out there, but you know, this is what that action did to this this particular image.
Okay, thanks.
So to answer your question, you can incorporate smart objects, but the dialog boxes on there help just as well.
Okay, nice. We have had so many questions about the stamp visible layers function or feature that you've been using. Can you show them how you're doing that?
Sure. Creating a stamp is awesome, because if you have a photo that goes into maybe 15, 20 layers, 100 layers, what you can do is you can create a stamp of that, which it basically tells Photoshop everything that happened under what you have selected is going to create basically a flattened object of what's below it. And the way that can be used is, let's say we do a bunch of things to this. So we'll do a hue saturation layer on this, kind of just, I'm just playing around here, and then do a curves adjustment, and then do some levels. We're kind of doing like a little cross process here. Let me play with the greens a little bit, do some cross processing. Now, if I were to click on this levels layer and press Control-Shift-Alt-E or Command Option-Shift-E, that creates a stamp. So that stamp is basically everything that we did below the stamp. If I click off all of this stuff, you can't see what I just did underneath there. If I click off of the stamp, we don't have anything. But we can also go back and make these invisible, and then maybe reduce the opacity of this because maybe it was too strong. That's where the stamp comes in very well, is that you can incorporate it into your processing, because you can make a stamp of everything happen below and then do editing on that one particular area so you don't harm what happens below it.
And a couple other people asked what Topaz products are going to be recordable within Actions, and you can record all Topaz products within your Action workflow. The only one I would suggest that you probably don't, unless you're trying to make an exact mask that you're going to put on the same image over and over again is remask, because again, it's very specific to the image that you're working on, so wouldn't necessarily make sense.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Blake. This has been awesome. We haven't ever had somebody go into the action workflow like this, and I know a lot of our users and a lot of the attendees here today really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Awesome. No problem. Thank you very much for having me here. This is incredible. So awesome experience, and I'm glad that people learned something. I know it was a lot of information all at once, but again, I can go ahead and put those presets out there, and if anybody has any specific questions about actions, please feel free to email me or visit the website, because a lot of my answers and responses might be in my tutorial section, so feel free to go there as well.
Thanks, Blake. Take care.
Yep. You too.